Hello, digital media oneers, twos, threeers, digital media for lifers, digital mediators. This is our Final Cut Pro tutorial. A tutorial taking you through the process of how we edit our news footage to make it into an actual news program. This is kind of an introduction to Final Cut. It'll give you an idea of how it works. It's what we do after we have recorded the footage and transferred that footage into a file that the computer can work with. And I'll show you where to go to do that. It's called logging and capturing, but we won't go through that process. It's something I can just show you myself. This is more of a kind of paint by numbers than a real tutorial. I'm going to show you how to open Final Cut, how to use it and edit footage and other elements. At another time, we'll go over how to edit the audio and do further refining of the editing. So let's get started. For me, the best way I found to open Final Cut Pro is the following. It may not be the best or easiest, but it's the one I just kind of figure out on my own. First, open up our FCP 750 storage. So that stands for Final Cut Pro. That is the server, or you can just think of it as like a really big hard drive wherein our Final Cut Pro files are located and where the editing files go to. And we're going to want to open the autosave vault. Since there are a lot of files and folders in the FCP storage, it makes it easier if you use these columns to kind of sort through everything. I know that I'm looking for the autosave vault, so if I click name, that will order the files alphabetically. Looking for autosave vault, it's right there. I prefer date modified, not date created, but date modified, because we want to open the last project that we had, because what we're doing is just changing it every time we do the news. We've got kind of a template laid out, and we just kind of plug in the new footage, take out the old footage, plug in the new footage, and make adjustments so that everything kind of syncs up nicely. Go to the first folder in the autosave vault at the top. The NC subcam has been the name of the project we've been using for a while, and then there are all these numbers after it. They're irrelevant. We just want to know autosave vault, top folder, top file. Double click, and that will open up Final Cut for us, and it'll bring up the project right where we want it to be. And this always pops up, offline files. Just click continue. It doesn't matter. We ordinarily, we have two large monitors. We work with two screens, but the screen capturing software I'm using, it only shows one screen, so I've kind of had to smush everything into one screen, but you'll have double this amount of room to work with. So let's say we've recorded, we've rewound the tape, taken the tape out, put it into the second VCR, and from there we'll click File and go down to Log and Capture. Log and Capture is how we get the information on the tape. Log and Capture transfers that information into audio video file in the computer that we can manipulate and edit. Log and Capture pulls up this window, and you'll want to click Now. And once you've done that, to your left on the desk there is the control pad for the VCR, and you'll hit play, and the log and capture will, the black screen here, you'll start to see your footage come up, and it works in real time. So it'll be doing that, and you'll see when it ends and you'll want to try to stop it as soon as the footage is through, because if you don't, it may just keep capturing everything that's on that tape, and it creates a huge file that takes up a lot of room. So I'm just going to take that down. I hit escape. I'm going to close out this window because we already have the file we want to work with. Now, after login capture, there will be one of these little icons that looks like a tape, a piece of analog tape, a little rectangle, and it'll say Untitled, and it'll be highlighted. Click on Untitled, and that will allow me to edit the name of that file based on the date. We double click on that, and that pulls it up in our viewer. It's one of the windows wherein we edit. We can also view and edit footage in the canvas in different ways. This window is the browser. That's where our files are at. The effects, that's where we can do some editing tricks and stuff. We can mess with the color and size and speed and transitions and all that kind of stuff from there. And this is your timeline. If you've ever used sound editing software like Audacity or something, there's a lot of similarities to that. You've got your tracks here, and everything up here is your video, your visual. Everything down here is your audio. If you have audio with video, if they're one file, wherever you drag the video, the audio follows. And there's a way to disconnect them that we won't go over here. So we have our anchor, we have Raina here, and we got the green screen. This little thing, that's called a scrubber. We've got scrubber over here too. Wherever the scrubber is where you're at in the sequence. You'll see the importance of it here in a minute when it comes to the editing. Now usually this isn't here, the chroma keyer. We need the chroma keyer to remove the green from the green screen. These little files here, they are the studio background files. So this, whatever is on top, this is where this is similar to photo editing software like Photoshop. You've got layers, and whatever's on top is what you're going to see. Whatever's on top is solid black or some other color. That's all you'll see, because it will block all of these other visual files. If the file on top, has holes in it, if it's translucent, you'll be able to see some of that background stuff bleed through. When we use the chroma keyer, it gets rid of that green so that all that shows up is the anchor, and places them in this new studio that consists of all these background elements. This is the chroma keyer is already in here, but the way to find it is to go to your effects, scroll down to key, the key folder here, take chroma keyer, press down and then drag it over here, and then that will create this tab. First, we want to split the segment up. We have different segments. We have, welcome to News Center 6 and more news after this message. And then move on to, the commercial next segment and all that kind of stuff. So we have one piece of video and we need 3 pieces out of it. So this is how we split it up. When you get the scrubber, you know how I say 3, 2. We want to begin right after that 2. Now I can move that scrubber with this little wheel here to make fine movements. 3, 2. And I'll show you on the keyboard there are these yellow buttons. One on the left says mark in, that's the I key, and mark out, that's the O key. You want to click mark in because that's where we're going to start.
Welcome to News Center 6. I'm Rena, and here's your news report. Now and look your best. More news after this message.
Okay. About a second or so after they say more news after this message, and then click mark out. So we've got we've got the beginning and the ending of this segment. Go up to where that clip is located up here and just drag it over, and we've got our mark in and mark out has given us the exact portion segment of the clip that we want. And I've got snapping enabled on here, so when I move this around, it will show these little lines when I've got it lined up. So I want it lined up with the left here, and the line shows. And you see where my cursor would be, there's this black arrow with a white outline. Before you let go of it, you want to make sure the arrow is pointing down and not sideways, because if it's sideways, it does that. It splits. It puts this big split in here. Make sure the arrow is down, and then you let go. There's the clip, but it's still got a green background, green desk, because the green is blocking out all of these background elements. If chroma keyer wasn't already on there, we go down from effects, go down to the key folder, go to chroma keyer, and then drag it over here, and then you'll see this spectrum, and then these refining tools down here. Ordinarily I would do this after I had each segment in place, so I'm going to just show you using one segment. Click the little dropper, the select color, then press the shift key and leave it held down, and then left click, and you see that sucks out a bunch of the green, but we've still got some left. We haven't taken our finger off the shift key. We leave it pressed down, and then click on select color again, and then find green areas. I'm going to try to get some from around her. So I can take my finger off the shift key, and sometimes, I might mess around with this spectrum, because you can grab it and drag it, and then you can further refine it. For edge thin, that can help get rid of a little bit of the green maybe around the edges. This looks pretty decent, but you see it's pixelated. It's kind of rough, jagged around the shoulders here and everything. That's what the softening tool is for. You run that scrubber a little bit, and you see it's starting to fade a little bit around the edges, and it's less jagged. But when we shrink it all down, it isn't noticeable. You normally can't get rid of all of the green, especially like when it's reflecting off of people's skin or their clothing. You can get some of that little green aura off with the enhance, and I just drag that over until I start seeing. I'm going to exaggerate it for you. If you drag it way over, you get this very thick violet color surrounding it. So I try to get it to where it's just before it starts turning purple, or just about purple, and that looks pretty good. But at this point, we can either, it doesn't matter which order, we can either crop it or resize it. I'm going to resize it to show you why we need to crop it. So I'm going to resize it first. I want to try to make her to a size that looks natural behind the desk. And I just kind of eyeball this, and I use the desk, I use the paper, and I use the logo up here as kind of references. How big is a person next to a piece of paper that's likely 11 by 8.5 inches. Kind of like to keep some headroom here. There's a certain amount of space you want between the person's head and the top of the screen. Well, this isn't the top of the screen, but it's a similar concept. So I think this size looks right, but you notice there's this rectangular outline. These are the shadows that kind of come from when we film it. Sometimes we'll accidentally, like the other chair be in frame or whatever, and we can use the crop function to get rid of that. From the chroma key, click on the motion tab and then click the drop down for crop. And you'll see, like, watch, I'm going to crop the left. And see, it gets rid of that shadow. Got rid of it on the right, got rid of it on the top, and then off the bottom. And look, see, I cut off part of her hands. So you got to be careful with that. And that's the one you got to be most careful about, because, you know, people move their hands. And I'm realizing she's either a little too big or I don't have her placed correctly, because her hand shouldn't be coming all the way to the end of that desk. So watch when I try to resize it. Oops, that just moved. What did I do now? Well, the reason that happened was because I have one of these elements selected, and because I do in our canvas, I just move that instead of the actual clip that I want to change. So I'm going to hit Control or Command Z. That's the hotkey to undo stuff. And I'll give you guys a list of hotkeys or shortcuts. They will make your life much easier, especially for this. And the keyboard we work with is labeled for Final Cut, so it's very helpful. It'll show you what keys do what. Like I said, I wanted to make her a little bit smaller and maybe pull up a little bit. I want her elbows resting. I think that looks natural, so it doesn't have to be perfect. When these get transmitted to the rest of the school, you know, it's on TVs, and the picture's pretty small, so any imperfections aren't that noticeable. Now let's watch it. Oh, you can't see it. That's because this needs rendered. The rendering process just makes it viewable when you play it. I should have said this at the beginning, and I should have said it 10 times already. You really need to save frequently. I save after almost every little change I make. A hotkey for that is Command S, and I render it often, depending on how long I'm willing to wait for stuff, or how long something's going to take to render. You know, if I've got a file that's very large and it's going to take a long time to render, you know, I might skip it so that I can get other stuff done in the meantime. But eventually I'm going to have to get around to rendering it. So let's render. And if I just hit, so Control R is render. If I don't have anything selected and I hit Control R and render, it's going to render everything that needs rendered. And if you have a number of things to render, that's going to increase the amount of time it takes to render. So I'm going to select this clip because it's what needs rendered. Control R, and it shouldn't take too long. Yeah, it's less than a minute. And if it gets stuck, if it takes a long, if you're getting these ridiculously long rendering prompts, you know, saying it's going to take like 17 minutes or whatever, you might need to close out, maybe restart the computer, maybe go into the FCP server and clear out some of the files. And most of that will speed up the process. I'm going to hit Control S to save it again. And then play.
I'm Raina, here's your news for Friday, August 12th. Class officer elections will take place.
And there we go. And it looks pretty realistic. Now, I believe I will close with that. So, to recap, we open Final Cut by going to the FCP 750 storage, find the autosave vault, find the most recent project, which will be the top. Since we just made some changes, it's created a new one. So next time it'll be this one. And then we click on the topmost file, and that will open Final Cut Pro for us. After we've logged and captured, we rename this in the browser, double click it, find the point where we want it to begin and end, and that's where we mark it in, mark it out. Then we drag the clip from here over to the place we want it on the timeline. Then we go down to the effects, find the key folder, drag the chroma keyer over to the viewer, cue out the green up here in our canvas. We crop, resize, add the fade in, fade out, dissolve, render, save again, and then we've got our segment. I hope you found this useful. We should have more of these in the future. If I can get some of you, all of you, one of you, any of you, proficient enough at this, you don't have to be perfect at it, but if you can just help, that would be a huge benefit for me, because there are so many things I have to do that a lot of times it seems like the only thing I get done is the news. So thanks for listening, and good luck with the rest of the course.